Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Welcome to the Work From Home Show. I'm your host, Naresh with Adam Schrader, and I want to welcome all of our homies, homegirls, homeboys, home trans, all the homebodies out there working hard at home. Today, we have a special, awesome guest who is going to help you work even more efficiently, more effectively from home because of the solutions that his company provides. His name is Mark Gilbreath. He's the founder and CEO of LiquidSpace and host of the Flexible Office Economy podcast. Very relevant to what we talk about here. So Mark, without further ado, welcome to the Work From Home Show.
Thanks, guys. Great to be with you both today.
Let's first start the discussion by talking about LiquidSpace and also your Flexible Office Economy podcast, both. So tell us, what does LiquidSpace do? When was it founded? Why was it founded? And also how it is relevant in today's kind of post-quarantine work-from-home economy.
Sure. Well, I founded the company 10 years ago, and we launched LiquidSpace 9 years ago. And it was the confluence of two strongly held beliefs, 10 years ago that led to me creating this service, which I'll describe in a moment. But the two things that were fueling me and sort of driving me forward were, on one hand, a growing angst personally and professionally about the sustainability of our planet, economically and environmentally. And the other sort of driving point of view or vision was the belief, sincerely held, that workplace, i.e. where we do our work as professionals, was a broken model. And in particular, that the model was broken because it presumed that, the company we work for, well-intentioned as they may be, whether it's a massive enterprise or a small startup, or whether it's me working for myself, but that the company who historically has been the one to create office space has always missed the mark, in the sense that no one better than the employee themselves, the individual themselves, can truly best appreciate what environment and what location is going to be the best space to do great work in any given moment. And companies are well-intentioned. They do their very best to design exciting offices with all of the affordances to be, engaging and thrilling to employees. But we're all human animals, and we're all unique, and we're all different. And the radical idea that I had 10 years ago was, wow, what if there was an app with which I could discover and evaluate and book a workspace with a click? Like, what if it could be just as freaking easy to find a great space to work as it is to book a dinner reservation on OpenTable, or have something delivered to me on DoorDash, or book a hotel room or a place to stay on Airbnb? What if it was just that easy? In fact, why the heck isn't it that easy? But that was the original founding point of view. And so what I created, what LiquidSpace is and has continued to grow, is a marketplace. We're a digital marketplace where, with a mobile app or with our website, liquidspace.com, individuals and teams and companies can search, find, and book space. We make that dead simple, just as easy as having DoorDash bring you lunch. And so we started that mission 10 years ago. We launched it commercially 9 years ago, and we've been growing ever since. And some of those principles that were behind our founding, this desire to empower individuals with flexibility and choice, and at the same time, put the real estate world on a more sustainable, environmentally and economically path. Both of those principles are all the more relevant today. COVID, we can talk more about that, I'm sure, But COVID has only put these principles on fast forward. And certainly anybody that has an open mind and is at all switched on knows that the growing threat to our planet of global warming and the imperative for sustainability are stronger today than they were 10 years ago.
So whenever you talk about your business model there, are these, WeWork was renting out the office space and then renting that out. Are y'all just an intermediary here, or are y'all also getting office space that people can rent that you hold the lease for? Or how has it worked, and how have y'all been able to maintain it for 9 years? Because this isn't really something that has been kind of huge among businesses for the past 9-10 years.
Sure. Well, we define the market today under sort of the term flexible office. And I host a podcast myself on that theme. I call it the flexible office economy. What flexible office means, the way we've defined it and the way much of the industry has adopted as a definition, is the principle of space to do work. This is about meeting space and workspace, but space that's made available on more flexible terms than the traditional long-term lease model. I mean, up until somewhat recently, up until the last decade, 99% of all office space was transacted on long-term leases, 10-year fixed commitments, irregardless of how the company's needs might shift and evolve. Companies were writing long-term commitments to space. Underneath that banner of flexible office, the types of space options that are available today on more flexible terms include quite a rich array. It includes co-working space operators, and WeWork that you mentioned is an example of that. There are 10,000 of them globally. It includes brands like Regus and thousands more like them that are in the business of, or that that have been around for 25 plus years, that are referred to as serviced offices or executive suites. Flexible office can also mean companies that might themselves have real estate and have excess, being willing to share it with others. So think about the Airbnb model. I might have a home with an extra bedroom or a vacation property on the coast that I don't use all the time. I own that space, but I might want to share it with others. Sharing of office space is now happening. So private companies are another source of flexible office. And then lastly, there's exciting movement afoot amongst institutional building owners. The companies that own the buildings that places like WeWork live in are themselves now awakened to the need to provide the market with space on flexible terms. And to make it more tangible and real, like flexible office at kind of a day-to-day level means it might be, Adam, a meeting room in downtown Manhattan for an hour tomorrow at 2:00 that you and I might want for this interview. Search, find, book via a platform like LiquidSpace. Flexible office might mean for Naresh and I, a team space for the two of us, an office for the two of us for the next 3 months while we are trying to get our startup off the ground. Flexible office might mean a regional sales office for Oracle for 3 years in a new market that they might be moving into, where they don't yet want to do a traditional lease because they're not clear on how much their team is going to grow. And signing a long-term 10-year lease seems absurd. So flexible office today means space by the hour, by the day, month, and even multiple years. And it means space being provided by co-working spaces and serviced offices, and private companies sharing extra space, and landlords providing space themselves, but on flexible terms. All of those flavors of space supporting use cases like I described are the scenarios that our platform is supporting. LiquidSpace is a digital marketplace. And what that means is we have supply and demand. The supply in our platform is the tens of thousands of entities, virtually every co-working space on the planet, virtually every serviced office on the planet, thousands of private companies, and a growing list of landlords who create listings on LiquidSpace. The same way a homeowner might create a listing on Airbnb, or a hotel might create a listing on Expedia, or a restaurant might create a listing on OpenTable. In our world, on LiquidSpace, it's real estate owners and operators that are creating listings on LiquidSpace to be connected directly to companies and individuals looking for space on flexible terms.
I think the conversation that we're having today is very different than the conversation we would have had we done this interview, let's say 6-7 months ago. So kind of how has the I guess the pandemic, if you want to call it, for lack of a better term, I guess the hysteria or the fear that people have when it comes to the virus and the concept of social distancing, how has that affected your business really for most of 2020? And what's your outlook moving forward as we go into 2021 and beyond when it comes to, let's say, lack of a vaccine and social distancing as it applies to office space?
It's such a sober topic, and I wouldn't for a moment accuse anybody of. You didn't, but I think I don't think people are being hysterical. I think we're finally opening our eyes and mobilizing and taking honest measure of the very real threat that's out there behind this particular pandemic. The effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the commercial real estate industry cannot be overstated. It has completely halted business as usual, and at a shocking pace, it has compelled companies to completely reimagine what workplace is going to be going forward. But let's sort of walk through it's only been 3.5-4 months that we've been in this historic event, this historic period of change. But I think it's instructional to kind of walk through the sequence of events here. When we here in North America fully sort of took initial stock, it was arguably early March that with the flare-ups in New York City and other major metros, that big levers started to be pulled. And on the West Coast in California and New York, those markets shut down, and in the weeks that followed, most markets across the U.S. did. And with that, workplace shifted nearly overnight from last hours and extraordinary offices for big companies and small to home. Right? Even to this day, even in this moment, 60% of employees are working at home. When these markets were shutting down for many, many companies, for the Facebooks of the world, the Nationwide Insurances, the Morgan Stanleys of the world, upwards of 90+% of employees were working from home. So in hours and days, we had an extraordinary migration. Employees migrated, the workplace migrated from office to home. And in the days and the weeks that followed, something miraculous happened. Like people they hacked out a workable existence out of necessity. Going back to the office was not yet an option. Like the offices were closed. The local municipal mandates were clear at a state or city level. And furthermore, people were unsure and nervous, and reasonably so. So no one wanted to. So we all hunkered down, right? You guys hunkered down. We hunkered down. Every employee in North America hunkered down, and we started hacking out, as a great enterprising nation can do. We started hacking out a new existence. A lot of folks, learned Zoom or Skype for the first time, but work carried on. And as the COVID situation turned into weeks and then months, and I think we now have an honest measure that this is going to be with us for some time. Naresh, until we have, as you touched on, either a vaccine or herd immunity, it's not going to be over tomorrow. It's not going to be over next month. It's not going to be over next quarter. It's going to be into 2021 at the earliest before we sort of see, before we can say it's behind us. And so as employees were sort of working out their work productivity at home, working remotely at scale, behavior change has started to creep in. We figured out how to have meetings on Zoom or Skype or what have you. We figured out how to produce, and a surprising number of companies have actually published internal findings about how productivity is actually held. In some cases, more work gets done, and now not without a cost. Like all of us are probably working harder and longer and new and different hours, but work's getting done. Meanwhile, in parallel to that, there has been a growing chorus from large employers who've seen this. They've observed what happened in March and in April. And as early April, we had major conservative companies like Morgan Stanley coming out and saying things like, this is from the CEO, James Gorman, 90+% of our people are working at home. We've had no major issues. Clearly, we will need much less real estate. Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook saying, we're going to be the most progressive, forward-leaning company on remote work. We could get to half of our company working remotely permanently. CEO Shopify says, we expect the majority of our people will work from home offices in the future. And so we had this mass migration in March. And as soon as April, and day over day, week over week, more and more CEOs are jumping into the fold saying, we're going to completely transform the way we think about real estate. Now, that doesn't mean the office is now home, end of story. And there's been a lot of, I think, unconstructive, unuseful, sort of polarized debate, office versus home, home versus office, co-working versus office, co-working versus home. I think, humbly, my point of view is that the real estate, the workplace world, where work happens, what is normal, has forever changed. And that we are forever now in a different place that I'll give it a name. See whether it sticks or not, we'll see. But I'll call it distributed work, distributed workplace, where the places of work are not going to be definitively home or office for a company overall, or even for individual. It's going to be a blend. For every company and for many individuals, home will be a place of work. For every company and many individuals, work will also happen at flexible office, co-working spaces, and other spaces available flexibly near home. And work will also happen at traditional offices and headquarters. And so from our vantage point, with what we see happening in the industry, the new place of work, the distributed workplace is home plus flexible office plus HQ. And by HQ, I mean the traditional office. And that's very much a glass half full. A distributed workplace that lets Adam choose to work at home Monday, Tuesday, and Friday and commute to the office on Wednesday and Thursday and save 6 hours of his work week. That's a better world, and Adam's a happier employee. For the company that chooses to embrace that rather than sort of hold on to conservative tenets, the company that embraces distributed work will have more engaged employees like Adam, but will spend less money overall on real estate. And our planet will smile on that future state as well, because it'll translate to better utilized space, fewer cars on the road, and a lot more happy people. So, bit of a ramble there, guys. Sorry, you get me wound up. I keep rolling. I'll pause.
Yeah, no, really good summary. And we really appreciate your honesty, too, because you could have easily just come here and said, oh, everything's going to rebound. We're going to go back to the way life was 6 months ago.
Well, some are saying that. And there are, and perhaps understandably, but I mean, put on the hat of the commercial real estate broker whose sole existence, his or her source of income, is predicated on guiding customers through the complex process of finding, leasing, and building out large chunks of space for 10 years at a time. He or she has less of a place in a future world where Adam and Mark and Naresh are tapping into flexible office for more or even all of their office needs, rather than commuting an hour back and forth to big real estate offices on the 50th floor of a tower. So the brokerage community has a horse in this race. They want to see a resumption of the office as usual. Similarly, building owners, like offices aren't dead. That's not going away. But building owners and big architecture firms and lawyers all would prefer to see the world of February 2020 come back, and it's not. That's my humble forecast. That world is not coming back, and whether only 10 or 20% of that, whether it comes back 80% or 90% or 30%, even if it's as minimal as a 10% change in where and how people work, that's an enormous shockwave through what was the status quo.
Are you expecting, as we come out of this, are you expecting the big corporate commercial real estate market to change away from the 10-year lease at all and shift towards more the the 2 or 3 year lease, or even, flexible, like I want this space on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday? Are you expecting the big corporations, or not big corporations, but the big landlords to be willing to do that? Or do you think they're going to still hold to that, 5, 10, 7-year lease and, leave the shorter term market to people like you?
Yeah, it's a great question, Adam. I am 100% expecting the big institutional landlords will embrace what we've been talking about. But here's the subtlety, and it's sort of back to the polarized debate. It's not all or nothing. So what does it mean for the big owners to embrace it? Well, it means I fully expect, in fact, it was already happening before COVID. Even before COVID, the big owner community had recognized that the customer, i.e. the tenants that they need in their buildings were increasingly choosing co-working spaces and serviced offices. They were increasingly choosing flexibility for more and more of their real estate spend. And so big building owners had already begun to mobilize on moving into the flexible office market. Now, for those in the audience who haven't studied kind of the real estate world, a big building owner could be a company like EQ Office or Brookfield or Boston Properties. Historically, they would lease space to companies on 10-year blocks, as we've talked about. Sometimes they lease space to co-working brands like Regus or WeWork or Industrious or Convene, thousands of others like them. And those companies then lease the space and then they rent it out to the end customer for an hour a day or a month, right, at a time. Big building owners have seen that those companies, those space operators like Regus and WeWork and Industrious and many, many others, were growing rapidly. Like last year in 2019, they comprised over 50% of the net absorption of office buildings. So building owners said, we want in that game. We can't afford to just let these intermediaries renting space in our building and then sub-renting it out to end users. Like we got to take this segment seriously. So even before COVID, many, many big building owners were mobilizing because they saw, and the industry observers are predicting, that the flexible use of a building is likely to approach 30% of the building overall in the next decade. So they had already mobilized. COVID is going to put that on steroids for two reasons. Number one, the trend was already there. Companies were already, occupiers, the users of space, were already looking for more flexibility in how they buy space. That's why players like WeWork had their meteoric rises. COVID is going to accelerate that for an additional reason, which is companies have now seen that their employees, when pressured, can work effectively remotely. And companies have now opened their eyes and said, holy guacamole, like this real estate portfolio I have, this office that was never full in the past, is likely to be even less full post-COVID because some portion of my employees, all of whom have been working at home, some portion of them are probably pretty freaking happy. Like it's been adequate. Like there's a subset of all the people forced at home who've been like, thank God, this is actually better. I'm in control of my environment. I like to be able to focus. I want to stay this way all the time. Another portion of that community has been largely happy. Like, heck, I could do this 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 4 days a week. But 1, 2, 3, 4 days a week, I want to be with others or I need to be back at the office. But they still want to have home as part of their office. So companies are seeing this, they're learning this, they're hearing it from their employees. And so companies themselves are saying, we're going to need less space on the other side. We're going to have some of our people working from home. Some are going to be working in flexible offices, and our primary offices are going to get smaller. Along with that, most CEOs, most CFOs are very cautious about the economic outlook in the market, right? And so economic uncertainty combined with an open-eyed recognition now that they can do more with less physical real estate, all those things combined to undermine landlord confidence in the outlook for traditional leasing. The smart, reasonable landlords that are looking at the tea leaves that are visible to all right now are recognizing that traditional leasing is going to be depressed for at least some amount of time. And it may well be that we are into a new enduring sort of secular phase where traditional leasing's growth rate is going to be forevermore lessened. And what looks to be growing is flexible office. So we have a good, healthy capitalistic market here. The money is going to be in flexibility. And I think you'll see landlords going there to go after that opportunity.
We have Mark Gilbreath, founder and CEO of LiquidSpace and host of the Flexible Office Economy podcast. Mark, talking about the timeline and where LiquidSpace is on that timeline. First off, where are you guys headquartered? Where are your, I guess, corporate offices, but digital offices as well? But then also, are you done with the funding process, or are you still in the funding process? And kind of how have you had to change strategy over the past couple of months as we move forward? I mean, I'm sure your business has changed tremendously.
Well, in some ways, it's been certainly impacted by COVID, but what we do and who we do it for really hasn't changed. So I'll touch on that first. Like when COVID hit, and when the real estate owners and operators that are the listings in our platform, had to reduce their operations or shut down, that's akin to a homeowner taking their listing off of Airbnb. So, in March and April, we saw a significant slowdown, not a cessation, but a slowdown of transactional activity in our platform. That was to be expected, and it happened. We've seen a dramatic rebound. In June, we were back at pre-COVID levels in terms of commerce on our platform. So, and part, for a couple of reasons. We had the traditional historic demands that people had. I mean, attorneys booking space for depositions, companies opening new offices, all those things, began to reemerge in April, May, and June. We also have seen and continue to see a flurry of new use cases that didn't exist pre-COVID. Law students and med students and undergraduates booking offices to be used as study halls because they're not going back to their physical campuses. Companies booking team spaces because they've had to de-densify or largely shut down their primary offices, but groups of employees need someplace to work temporarily. So there are some COVID tailwind types of use cases combined with the return of those that we had previously that are bringing us back to sort of our new normal. You asked about our headquarters. I don't know if that was tongue-in-cheek or a softball pitch up the middle, but I'll answer it very earnestly. LiquidSpace as a company is a fully distributed team. We have employees in 3 continents in at least 7 time zones. To be a LiquidSpace, there is no singular headquarters. We have 50,000 offices around the planet that we can work from. We use LiquidSpace. When we need office space, we use LiquidSpace. And so it's given us the power and the latitude to be able to hire great people wherever they might be, whether that's in Barcelona or Eastern Europe or Oakland, or, I live in a mountain ski town in Idaho, right? And
so you are a global company. It's not just the United States.
Yeah, we are. We have employees around the world, and we are serving client needs around the world. And then you asked about funding. CEOs, especially CEOs of startup companies, are always thinking about capitalization. There's an old adage: you're always raising money, right? And so that that certainly applies to us. We're as a company that's growing and as a company that's actually now enjoying some pretty distinct COVID-related tailwinds and serving a market that just got larger, i.e., the market awareness of flexible office, the market need for it are both distinctly stronger than they were 4 months ago. And so with regards to our sort of needs of capital or capacity to raise more, if and when we want to, I think it's going to be a receptive market in terms of interested investors.
Whenever you're looking at the bookings going on in your platform, are you seeing more, like how many people are booking for? Like, are people booking just like a single room for them to work in? Are they booking it for like 8 or 10 people? Kind of what is the general group that's coming to your service and utilizing it?
In the LiquidSpace platform, at liquidspace.com or through our app, there are sort of 2 broad sort of transaction contexts. One is on-demand space. And by that, I mean, I need a space either for myself alone or for, the 3 of us or a team of 8 people, but I need space on demand and for a task. this interview for the next 2 hours, or a private office to work in for a day, or a meeting room for a deposition, or a conference room for a marketing planning offsite that I might want to run for 3 days. But in all of those instances, it's something that I want on demand and just for the duration of that task. And so it's going to be a transaction for space for some number of hours or few days. That's one sort of dimension of the commerce that's happening in LiquidSpace. That's a portion of the flexible office economy that's happening in LiquidSpace. The other dimension or portion of need that we're serving is what internally we would refer to as dedicated space, where I'm looking for a persistent office, albeit on flexible terms that a traditional lease just can't give me. So it might be I myself individually want an office in Chicago for the next month, or it might be that we 3 co-founders of a startup company want an office for the next 6 months in Austin, or it could be this 40-person sales and marketing team for XYZ large enterprise need an office for the next 1 or 2 or 3 years in Atlanta, Georgia. But in all of those scenarios that I've just described, it's what I would call dedicated space. It's a office space that I'm going to use over a longer period of time, nominally a month, conceivably multiple years. But in any case, more flexibility on that term than a traditional lease ever could have offered.
Now, talking about the different types of spaces, you're host of the Flexible Office Economy podcast, and the term flexible office, it could be like what you said. It could be an office building. It could be someone's home. It could be I used to work on, when I lived on a beach, I used to work on the beach. There was Wi-Fi there. That's considered a flexible office. So what types of spaces do you think are going to be most in demand post-virus?
Sure. Well, the flexible office economy, looks to be or is describing those providers of space and those consumers of space where there is a value exchange, right? Where I need space as a service. I'm an attorney and I need a meeting room to conduct a deposition and I'm willing to pay for it, or I am Oracle and I need a regional sales office in a certain city and I'm willing to pay for it. So this is so the flexible office economy doesn't pretend to include the fact that you might be on free Wi-Fi at Starbucks or using your cell phone to get online while you're sitting on the beach. That certainly is a part of the exciting broader world of where work can happen. But the flexible office economy is really describing those professional providers of space. And we touched earlier on the types of entities that are those providers. And to say it again, it's everything from co-working spaces to serviced offices to private companies monetizing extra space that they might have to big building owners. In terms of what do we anticipate in terms of need I won't be so bold as to predict what the world's going to want 3 years from now, but I can tell you what the world is shopping for today and what we believe will be the bias for the foreseeable future, i.e., during this continuing early period of rebound and recovery. And the biases today are toward more private space versus communal. And so there's a distinct and clear bias in the searching and transactions on our platform for people booking standalone private offices and or team suites rather than communal desk environments or open environments where they may be exposed to an open population. In addition, we're seeing, a bias toward more flexibility rather than long-term commitments. Well publicized now that traditional leasing is down dramatically, and in our conversations, in particular with mid-size and larger enterprises, we've got a front row seat to the internal thinking, and most companies have, at least for now, paused, in some cases entirely, their traditional leasing activity while they sort out what their go-forward strategies are going to be. I'll also share within our marketplace, there has been a skew toward even smaller offices, a significant upkick in one-person office consumption. And interestingly, that's coming from some new types of users. There's been a strong uptick in individual employees at large enterprises booking individual offices. And what we understand that to be is that employee who has been working from home, as we all have, who needs something to augment or replace home, but doesn't yet have the option of returning to a traditional office. So that's happening. And I touched earlier on the education use case. We're seeing I didn't predict it, but it now makes sense. And as a parent with a daughter that's poised to go to college for the first year this fall, whose campus was just declared to be shut down, like I can relate. I'm sympathetic, empathetic. There are droves of students who will be looking for temporary environments where they can have solitude, privacy, good connectivity, a good ergonomic environment to be able to do their remote coursework. That's going to be a real use case for the COVID recovery period.
So what is the vetting process for y'all when it comes to getting a property put on there? Like if I just have a rental property in a city, can I just offer it up? Or what is each area, like whenever you go there as a landlord, potentially, what do I have to do to get qualified? And as a potential tenant, what should I expect in these office places?
Analogous to Airbnb or OpenTable or various other digital marketplaces, even eBay as one of the original gangsters of this concept, we've strived to make that process of sharing your space, monetizing your space, be as frictionless as possible. So if you're a co-working space or a private company with extra desks or a landlord, on liquidspace.com, it's as easy as clicking on list space, and our digital widgets and workflows will sort of handhold you through creating a listing and submitting it. We do a vetting and approval process internally after you've submitted your profile, and that generally happens in hours or a relatively few days, after which your space and your profile, your unique identity, emerges on the LiquidSpace platform in the marketplace and is discoverable by customers. For the end users, for our customers, those people looking for space, we give them the tools to be able to search and filter and find their best space. Right? And so, finding the best space for Adam, let's imagine Adam's looking for a private office in Newport Beach, California. Helping Adam find the best space is going to be a combination of two things. It's going to involve allowing Adam to steer the process, using filters to be able to express what matters most to him. And then that's going to be augmented by us applying our artificial intelligence and our algorithms to then surface out of the thousands of options that we might have in a given market to present and rank for Adam those properties that we think best match and will best delight Adam based upon those criteria that he put in. Right? And so algorithms are working in concert with Adam pulling on the levers to present him with the options that will be the ideal fits for him. And then our platform, once we've sort of presented that gallery of options, we make it easy for Adam to schedule a tour, look at videos, correspond with that property, and ultimately we make it dead simple for him to execute a contract with that space.
Now, I was reading a couple of weeks ago, I don't remember where, but I believe you guys are making a push for the government, whether it's local governments, federal government workers, to start taking this seriously, our politicians to start taking the whole work from home movement or just working remotely in general more seriously. What exactly are your thoughts there as these ideas and concepts apply to government policy as it relates to the economy, but also government workers working remotely more?
It's a very exciting element of our business and what we expect and hope the future will hold. So first off, the federal government, the U.S. government, this probably won't be surprising to most folks when they hear me say it. They're the largest owner and operator of real estate in the world. The U.S. government owns and operates, either outright owns buildings or leases space, totaling about 750 million square feet. Half of that's owned, half of that's leased.
Let me just interrupt. So when they lease it, who are they leasing it to?
Well, so the real estate department of the federal government is the General Services Administration, the GSA. And there's a sub-organization underneath it called PBS, the Public Building Services. But broadly speaking, the GSA is like the procurement department for the federal government. So the GSA's job is to, if the Defense Department needs to house 100 more workers at a Air Force base in Ohio, the GSA's job is to go and procure that real estate to support that internal customer, that department within the government. So the GSA is out there procuring and managing real estate for all of the agencies across the federal apparatus. That's what they do. And in aggregate, if you sum up all of the real estate that we taxpayers are paying for, it's the largest real estate portfolio in the world, the largest organization in the world. So it's a big piece of real estate collectively. And it's one that historically has had some rather conservative approaches to real estate. Now that started to change in some exciting ways under the Obama administration. President Obama put into effect an executive order that tasked the GSA with pursuing efficiency in its real estate spend, and also in embracing sort of concepts of flexibility. Fast forward to January of this year, and the GSA put out an RFP, a request for proposal, to the world for flexible co-working services. And it's a public document, you can look it up. But that document described the GSA's vision, their desire to establish, I'll sort of paraphrase, to establish a set of supply relationships channels to be able to efficiently provide co-working space to federal employees. Historically, the GSA's reflex would have been to sign a 10 or a 15-year lease. That was their reflex. And the vision that had emerged inside of the GSA was, hey, we need to complement that. We need different horses for different courses. And increasingly, we see that our federal employees would like more options than just commuting into a fixed office. And we think that might be a good thing for those employees, and we think that might be a good thing economically, financially for the federal government. So this request for proposal that we have responded to, and others have too, is to provide the federal government with flexible co-working services. And the positive thing we should all sort of feel good about as taxpayers, those of us who are, is that the government's woken up to this thing that most private companies have been sort of seeing as well, which is, wow, giving workers and employees flexibility and choice, that's a good thing. It makes good sense. Makes employees happier, and it can be more economical, and it can be better for the planet. So the GSA has not yet announced its awards with regards to that particular RFP, but the long arc of the GSA's intent became a lot more clear in January when they revealed their intention to head down this path. And we hope to be a provider that is supporting that strategic direction of the GSAs.
Awesome. Great. Well, I had no idea about any of that, so I learned a lot just with that one answer. We have Mark Gilbreath on our show, founder and CEO of LiquidSpace and host of the Flexible Office Economy podcast. The website is liquidspace.com, liquidspace.com. You can also go to your app store. You're available on both Android and iPhone. Is that correct, Mark?
That's correct.
Yep. Go to your app store, get the LiquidSpace app. It's free to download. And Mark, before we sign off, do you have any final thoughts or anything else you want to plug to our listeners?
Well, I mean, presuming that most of your family of listeners are probably like the three of us, remote workers. We're on the potential sort of user side. I would, and I guess I'll try to frame this in a constructive and glass half full kind of way. Like, wake up, everybody! Like, we are in a new world. You should all be optimistic and rejoicing in the fact that forevermore, you're going to be more empowered. And, prospective employers who might want to attract you to their firms are far more likely to be much more open-minded about you working where and how and what hours you want to. And to the extent that you doing your best work needs something more than your home or your apartment, we'd love to be your friend and partner. And at liquidspace.com, you can easily join our our growing community of 100,000 plus companies that are leveraging the flexible office economy. We'd love to be a partner of yours. If anybody heard the show today and they do want to reach me directly, you're welcome to. My inbox is open to you. Give me a shout out. Mention the show so I can rebound that back to Adam and Naresh. But you can reach me at Mark with a K, MARK at liquidspace.com. I'd love to open up a dialogue.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I wish you guys all the best, but I'm a fan of the technology. I'm a fan of the concept. And I think, I don't want to call myself a pessimist when it comes to kind of the old models, but I think this is going to stick around. I think it's a need that it's flexible, as you say. You call it flexible office, and it does give you a little more than just working at home. It certainly does, and it's flexible with the leases. So I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to tell my friends about it. I think tell some clients about it. I think it's definitely worth checking out and taking very, very seriously. So my hat's off to you for creating this company from Idaho. I had no idea something so innovative would be coming from there, but good for you guys, and thanks a lot for coming on our show. Check us out, workfromhomeshow.com, www.workfromhomeshow.com. If you have any questions for Mark and you don't feel like contacting him through liquidspace.com, reach out to us. We'll make sure he gets a question. hello@workfromhomeshow.com. hello@workfromhomeshow.com. And until next time, keep on working from home.